Please welcome to the stage MIT Alumni Association President, Natalie Lorenz Anderson.
Welcome. Good morning, everybody. How could you stay in your seats during that video, right? Very danceable. So as you heard, I am Natalie Lorenz Anderson. I am fortunate to be the Alumni Association President this year. I'm also class of '84 and have been proud to serve. It's such a pleasure to be with you, all of you, during this wonderful week. Our alumni returning, our families, our friends, the graduates this week, and Technology Day is one of the signature events, as you well know. I've been coming to these for decades myself, and I swear that they get better every year. Don't you think? The speakers were incredible. So I'd like to acknowledge that the video that we just watched marking the 150th anniversary of the Alumni Association, I really think it does beautifully capture the essence of our decades of alumni and the alumni who came before us in terms of their shaping of our past, present, and future of MIT. So I'd love to thank the MIT Alumni Association for the opportunity to be part of this special morning with you, for organizing this amazing tradition that reminds us of what makes MIT so extraordinary. If you've ever tried to take a drink from MIT's proverbial fire hose, you know what it means to be immersed in big ideas, and I think that's what you got this morning. We highlighted two new transformative initiatives already shaping the future of collaborative research through Mythic and HEALS. The efforts are not just remarkable for the breakthroughs they seek, but for the way they bring people together across disciplines, across departments, and across perspectives to confront some of the world's most urgent challenges. They reflect something I've always appreciated about MIT. It's our ability to ask those bold questions, to follow curiosity wherever it leads, and to combine science, technology, and human insight to make real-world impact. To Dean Anantha Chandrakasan and to our outstanding lineup of faculty, thank you for sharing your time, passion, and expertise with all of us. Now it is my honor to introduce the next part of our program, a special fireside chat with the 18th president of MIT, Sally Kornbluth. Since taking office, President Kornbluth has brought a fresh and urgent focus to some of the world's biggest challenges, especially climate change, human health, and the societal impact of science and technology. She's a fierce advocate for research excellence, for interdisciplinary collaboration, and for making sure that the work that we do here at MIT reaches well beyond our campus. She's also someone who deeply values the role of the alumni community, whether it's through projects like the Climate Project or initiatives like HEALS and Mythic. She sees a clear and powerful role for alumni as partners in MIT's mission. I'm looking forward to her reflections, and I know you are too. Please join me in welcoming MIT President Sally Kornbluth.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks, Natalie.
Lovely to have you here today.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
So I think with all the audience that's here today, many people were at commencement this week, so I think we need to have a quick question about what happened, and do you have any comments on that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I have to say, and I'll address it in a more serious way in a moment, but I have to thank you personally for reenacting the brass ring turning, because I think that was a great symbol of the power of the alumni, and also the students really, really appreciated it. Look, I won't go into great detail, but I will say this. Our motivation in the way it was handled was to return the commencement to the families whose children were graduating as quickly as possible. In the moment, I just really wanted to calm the waters and move forward. The notion that we have then banned the student from participating in the diploma ceremony the next day, look, I can tell from my email box that people have different opinions on this, but I will say this. It was actually based on two things. One is the fact that the remarks that had been submitted and rehearsed did not align with the remarks that were delivered. and that it was really just, to my mind, essentially a violation of our time, manner, and place rules. It was not the right time or manner or place for these comments. So I do think in the end everyone was able to really enjoy the commencement and the joy of their families graduating.
Yes, thank you. So it's also a serious moment for MIT, as you heard from a lot of our presenters this morning. American research universities, especially MIT, but all of them are under giant pressures right now, and the innovation ecosystem is at great risk. And I wanted to talk with you about that in a minute, but I do want to go a little bit to this morning's program, the amazing faculty that we heard from. So one of the things that you often talk about is helping to lead the people of MIT and doing big things together. And to make that possible, you've introduced a range of these amazing initiatives. I know I speak for many alumni. When I was back on campus 40 some odd years ago, it didn't feel like there was a lot of cross-campus collaboration, or maybe as an undergrad it wasn't that obvious, but it felt more stovepiped. And I think what has happened over the last 2 years, but even prior to that, but over the last 2 years with your leadership, I believe that you are really harnessing the collective talent of the community in these big swings, these big topics. So last year, when you were here at Tech Day, we heard you talk about climate. And since then, we've heard about the 2 initiatives this morning, and we know that generative AI and manufacturing, and there may be others that we'll be talking about. It's such a broad range. What in your mind links them all together?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And before I get to that, I do want to give a huge shout out to Anantha, who really has been such a fantastic partner in getting all of these initiatives lifted off the ground. It's interesting. I think superficially they look like they don't have anything to do with each other. But one thing that you mentioned that I think is core to this is the notion that we really have to harness interdisciplinary expertise to tackle the big societal problems now. And that doesn't actually align necessarily very well with the traditional ways that departments and schools are organized. There are good reasons to have those sorts of organization, but they just don't facilitate the kind of resolution of the problems that we need now. But the other thing that I think, aside from the interdisciplinarity that I guess is obvious on the face of how these are described, there's a couple things. One is how we amplify the strengths that we already have. So none of these initiatives came out of thin air. They really harnessed the kinds of amazing things the faculty are already doing. But the other thing is, they're all designed to promote new collaborations, not only within MIT, but also with industry, with other entities, and also to be able to, to be able to catalyze excitement among the faculty in doing these initiatives. So you'll see a lot of them are structured such that, for example, there are seed grants involved. There's nothing to get faculty together to come up with big ideas like resources that will allow their minds to really, roam freely. And, I like to think of it a little bit as sort of like venture capital. We give them something to get them jump-started, and then they take it from there. And, the return on our investments are huge. Not just financially, obviously, but in terms of the incredible advances that we see in all these areas as a result of this work.
Yes, and you see the real excitement. The speakers today are just a great example. So many amazing topics, and the energy and passion behind it. It's lovely to see. And
it's actually really important in this time, and we'll get to talk a little bit about this when federal funding is contracting. People like to give to things they're passionate about and excited about. In reality, these all go to things like core, students, postdocs, faculty, et cetera. They are the engines that drive this. But I think, people like to know that when they're giving to an area that excites them and they're interested in. And so this is really formulating how we can drive these things forward while also providing an avenue for faculty to realize their best ideas and to obtain the resources to do so.
Absolutely. And you mentioned seeding these projects and initiatives, and that reminds me, you did speak about climate last year.
Yes.
And I'm sure that people would love a brief update on where is that project now? How's that going?
So for those of you who maybe weren't here last year, and just to kind of refresh people's memories, the climate project at MIT was really started, again, to stimulate interdisciplinary collaboration around climate. But what we did was organize it into missions, whether it be, decarbonizing industry or frontline communities or what have you. And in the time that we last spoke, we selected leads of each of these missions. They've gotten the projects off the ground. And importantly, we also selected the leader of all of this, Evelyn Wang, who many of you know was previously the department head of MECE and then became director of ARPA-E. And what Evelyn has brought to this, I think, is very important. Even though we have the MIT Energy Initiative, Evelyn highlighted the importance in the close collaboration between the climate project and the energy initiative, because the energy transition and achieving delivery of energy in a low carbon manner is one of the most pressing issues for the climate project. So she really, and I'll quote her here, she said, "Since the energy sector accounts for approximately 3/4 of global greenhouse emissions, climate change is largely an energy problem. By addressing these twin challenges, we can build a healthy, resilient, and sustainable future for all." And so she's really crafting with the mission leads how each one of those missions can answer these sorts of issues. But also we have started seed money projects, again, that can harness all of the individuals on campus who are interested in climate and energy. And the two areas that we have first requested research proposals in are sensing, sharing, and understanding the state of the climate and the planet. So MIT is fantastic at gathering information, analyzing information, sensing, and so I think that's critical. And I will just say as an aside, that's also aided by our great expertise in AI, because the sort of data analytics that are needed are certainly facilitated by AI. But the other area that might not be immediately obvious to people is heating and cooling solutions. As the world, particularly cooling, as the world gets warmer, a huge amount of energy is used in air conditioning. So finding new ways to cool, finding ways to do energy efficient cooling is going to be absolutely essential going forward. And it was interesting, we got more than 100 proposals on these topics, and so we're analyzing them now.
That's excellent. It was interesting, we were at the Met Warehouse yesterday for a tour, and right there you see in action the idea of applying it to MIT itself, some of the things we heard about for sustainability at the building. That was really great.
I mean, that's core also, which is MIT as a sort of test bed of some of the things we come up with, and the students are incredibly excited about it. I remember at the end of the year last year, I got a sort of letter with 400 signatories from students asking how they can participate in these projects, and they're very excited to have MIT be a pilot place for them to test their most exciting ideas.
Absolutely. So we talked a lot about Mythic and HEALS this morning, and when I think about Mythic, I'm reminded that we had a requirement to take humanities. You had to take 8 over the course of your 4 years, and whether or not they had a thread or a connection was difficult. So it felt a little bit compartmentalized from the STEM studies. Can you say a little bit more? We already saw some great presentations, but why do you think it's really important that we're focused on this?
Yeah, I'll definitely speak to that. I will say I kind of laughed because I think a huge amount of energy is put into coming up with these acronyms too, so that people can remember what we're talking about. I really liked the Mythic one. That took a little bit of ingenuity. Anyway, Mythic addresses a couple of problems that I think are longstanding at MIT. One is that, faculty in the humanities, although they're part of the Institute, given the incredible focus on science and engineering, really integrating their efforts with the rest of the Institute as incredibly important contributors to the education and research missions at MIT has always been somewhat of a challenge, because it's a hugely disparate in numbers. But the other thing is that so many of the problems that we're dealing with, I mentioned AI, or AI addressing societal problems, but a lot of other things that we work on in terms of technology require, first of all, a humanistic understanding to design the best technologies, but also we have to think about the ethical guidelines concerning deployment of these technologies. So we want our students to be well-versed in the humanities and social sciences as well as in the sciences. Now, to attract and retain the very, very best faculty in these areas, we also need to encourage their scholarship and intellectual progress. And so when you look at Mythic, it's really sort of two different approaches. One is to really reward and encourage the scholarship of our humanities, SHAS and humanities and social sciences faculty. But the other is to stimulate novel collaborations between humanities faculty and the scientists and engineers. And I think that's maybe not absolutely unique to MIT, but it's actually very unusual. You do not see this in many places, and you honestly don't see many places where the School of Engineering, for example, contributes to this both financially and organizationally. So it's been great. So we've put out initial proposals for collaborations between SHAS faculty and our other schools, and we had 89 proposals submitted. 32 have been selected for initial funding, and I just have to tell you a couple of them, which I've written down just because there's so many of them to mention, but let me just very briefly say, we have a Nobel Prize-winning economist, Esther Duflo, and an EECS professor, Marzia Gassemi, who are exploring AI-based diagnostic tools to scale up access to health screening in low-resource areas. We have a political scientist, In-Song Im, and a mathematician, Jorn Dunkel, who are studying US legislative and lobbying networks using mathematical modeling to reveal which interests dominate legislative outcomes. This is something we actually really need insight into right now.
Yes. Yes.
We also have a pianist, Mian Kim, and a researcher in IMS, Praneeth Namburi, who want to develop a biomechanical understanding of musical expression and skill development to bridge the gap between artistic expression and biomechanical efficiency. And then finally, I'll say we have something called the Living Climate Futures Lab. This is administered by the Anthropology Department. It includes 24 faculty and researchers bringing SHAS and STEM disciplines to explore the impact of climate change on our everyday lives. So, these are intellectually interesting, and they're incredibly important for the future of our society. So I'm really excited to see where these things go. And I'll say another thing, which is I hope to be able to bring to this audience and others the sort of fruits of these labors and the insights that we gain. Because I think we're going to hear novel things, and we're going to have symposia and updates and new ways to share the interesting findings that come out of this research.
I think that's great. Yeah, those the launches, for example, of Mythic last fall and then Heels in December, those were, I think, really well attended, and I do think there's an appetite among not only alumni, but the audience at large, the country, the world, to know more.
I mean, I learn something every time I attend one of these things. It's amazing.
So, and then also on Heels, which we also had some incredible presentations this morning. The MIT is already known for innovative ideas in this area. Kendall Square is considered the biotech capital of the world. So there are people who ask, well, why does MIT need a special initiative on this? And again, we know from the examples today how important that was, but what can you say about that?
Heels is particularly interesting, not only for triggering collaborations within the Institute. I think what we have not had a coordinated way of approaching is our collaborations with the entities outside of MIT. So everybody knows about Kendall Square and being one of the most, if not the most innovative square mile in the biotech and biomed arena. But we also have this incredibly rich environment of hospitals. And honestly, this is not just a problem of MIT. This is a problem everywhere. I can tell you from the institution I was at previously that even owned its own hospital, which is getting collaborations between very basic scientists, getting collaborations between people who work on AI, computer science, et cetera, and those who are doing clinical work is not easy. You have to do it in a very intentional, very formal way, whether it's because of disputes over things like intellectual property, or more likely because people are just super busy. And if you have people, for instance, working on AI and isolation, they don't necessarily know which clinical problems to address and which have the greatest need for these technologies. So we were very Vince Roche from Analog Devices gave us seed money to start, for example, in the context of HEALS, to start an AI health collaboration with MGB and MIT. And what that's going to enable us to do is have the clinicians on the ground define the problems where AI would allow them to advance clinical care most expeditiously. And, this will involve a lot of meetings between almost like what's the word, like social mixers or, match days or quick dating or whatever. Speed dating, that's what I'm looking for. To really allow these researchers and clinicians to interact frequently and figure out what the best areas are for innovation. And these hospitals have access to some cutting edge technology, but they don't necessarily have access to the kind of in-depth AI expertise, for example, that we have at MIT.
Yeah, and the approach feels like a way to bring things faster, to get done faster, the things that matter the most.
Exactly.
As opposed to, like you said, people studying things, but they don't know if it matters. So this is really
exactly.
helpful. So we also heard really recently that you launched a new initiative for manufacturing.
Yes.
What would you like to share with us right now? Why is that so important?
Yeah, it's early days, but MIT has a great history of really the future of work, made in America, reports that have come out of MIT. And look, this is a pressing issue for our country right now. When people talk about onshoring more manufacturing in the United States, when people talk about problems with international supply chain, et cetera, we've got to have the expertise here at home. And this initiative spans from how to make factories more efficient. I mean, I was surprised to hear in talking to the leads of this initiative that many, many, many factories in America have no robots, and many have only one. So how do we try to enable more industries to take advantage of robots, automation, et cetera? But another element I think is really critical is workforce education. I mean, it's not like everybody who's going to be participating in manufacturing across this country are going to come, to MIT. And frankly, most people don't need the sort of very in-depth theoretical grounding in some of what the MIT students get to be able to be incredibly effective in a new manufacturing economy.
Right.
And so we're talking a lot about how we train across the United States individuals who will be participating in the next wave of manufacturing. And we're coming up with all sorts of ideas, both online and also ways to train the trainers and have workshops, et cetera. So that's coming along. So I think it's everything from policy to technology to education. And bringing that together all under one umbrella, I think is going to be incredibly productive. And this is another area where the faculty are drawn from across the institute and are just incredibly excited about it. And I think it can have a very, very real impact on U.S. manufacturing.
And it feels like sooner than when we talk about healthcare research, it can take longer to see things.
That's right.
But this is the kind of thing that I feel like what you've described can be really quick to get that out there and have it make a difference.
Particularly the education piece. I mean, we've heard from companies that have tried to establish, new manufacturing in certain areas where then they just can't get the workforce.
Right.
And so if we can contribute to that, I think that will be incredibly important.
Feels like an area where vocational tech and schools can also benefit
where we can help with curricula and help to move things forward. Absolutely.
Great. Well, moving on to sort of the bigger question of the day about the impact to MIT of what's going on in Washington. I don't think I need to say a lot more about what that's been about, but I know that there have been a lot of conversations among alumni, obviously with you, with your team. Can you tell us a little bit about where things stand right now, and how are you thinking about MIT positioning to meet the challenge of the day?
Yeah, look, I mean, I firmly believe, and I say this to anyone who will listen, that MIT is an institution that is absolutely critical for innovation in this country, for national security, for defense, et cetera. So, and honestly, when I go to Washington and I meet with senators, congresspeople, people in the executive branch, everyone acknowledges this.
Yes.
But the thing is, we are caught up in the dragnet of changes across all of higher education. And also, we're not standing alone in this ecosystem. Our collaborations with our partners in higher education are incredibly important. So, look, it could be, we don't know exactly where we're gonna land up. In the worst possible scenario, you could have a perfect storm where we would, have a 21% endowment tax, where we would have a 15% indirect rate on all of our federal funding, and where the direct federal funding from so many agencies could be cut really dramatically. I mean, I don't know what the final budget's gonna look like, but the original proposals have cuts to the NIH budget, 40, 50%, moving from like, what, 12 billion to like 3.5 billion or something with NSF, to DOE cuts. Even if DOD budget increases, it's not being spoken of as if those increases are going to be reflected in the research budget. So, we're looking at a hit to the Institute that could, and I don't think we're going to wind up quite in as dire a situation, but we're not going to be as we are now either. But in the worst case scenario, you're talking about a cut to our budget of 1/3. Now, I am not going to, if we wind up in that situation, I can tell you one thing I think we should not do, which is spread the peanut butter across the whole Institute. We're going to have to decide how we strategically pick our areas, because we're not going to be mediocre. We have to be able to invest in excellence, and that's going to be a long process. Now, I will say one other thing, though. Look, we don't know where we're going to land up, but Glenn Shore and his team, the EVPT, is really doing intense scenario planning. So we have a list of sort of criteria, conditions, et cetera, for every potential magnitude of cut we're going to get in every arena.
Okay.
Now, all this said, we are doing our best to try to stop the changes that are going to damage MIT. Look, we're not trying to poke anyone in the eye, but when it's appropriate, we're engaging in legal redress. So, for instance, the American Association of Universities sued and were able to receive a temporary restraining order on the indirect dollar cuts to NIH and NSF and DOE. And we were essentially one of the lead named plaintiffs to step forward. In a slightly different cast of universities have been named in each one, but they've been between like 9 and 14 universities who have stepped forward. And we stepped forward because they wanted a Massachusetts venue. Mm-hmm. And so it was important to have a named plaintiff that was in Massachusetts. So look, we're trying to participate with our peers, but we're also trying to really crisply define, and I'm going to DC, every other week at the least. Yeah. And, I've been meeting with folks on both sides of the aisle, and really trying to, and people in the executive branch, as I said, and really trying to hammer home the absolute importance of the work we do. You and I were discussing, people aren't going to see an immediate change in their lives. If you look, for instance, at medicines and biotech, if we stopped all research right now, the pipeline of drugs might not go dry for another decade. So it's hard for people to see the immediate consequences. But it will go dry if we do not have any way to continue innovating.
Right, and so much wasted research that it's in the 5th or 10th year.
That's right.
Of an important 15 or 20 year, and you lose it.
That's right.
So that's
I always tell people, we have a nuclear reactor.
Yeah.
It doesn't. You have to pay to operate that.
Is that a threat? No.
No.
Not the nuclear option. No, that's not what you meant.
No. Definitely not.
I'm kidding. Oh gosh. So in April, you did write to alumni about many of these issues, and of course, with so many alumni gathered here and of course on live stream and listening to this later, I would be remiss not to ask you, what can alumni be doing?
So look, there's a whole range of things. And when I sent the note out asking people to call congressmen and senators, et cetera, quite a number did, and I think that's important. Look, I'm not claiming that everything we do is perfect, and I understand that people have differences of opinion, and so I wasn't trying to plant any particular message, except that if people value the research and work and the education that MIT provides, they should voice it because it is in danger. The other thing is just talking to your friends and family. It's interesting to me when I talk to people, even people who really should know some of the details here, they don't.
Right.
And so there's a lot of material on the web about our endowment, about what we're doing, about our initiatives, et cetera. And I think it's important for people to be able to speak to these issues. Right. I get asked a lot, for instance, why not just spend your endowment? And, we've put up educational materials on this, but, aside from the fact that a lot of our endowment is restricted, and that people have given money with particular intent, we pay out about 5% a year. We're projecting 8% growth. That doesn't happen every year. And, there's 3% inflation. So if we want to have intergenerational stability, that's important. Plus, at MIT, and this is a message to carry, I think, everywhere, we provide free tuition to anyone earning under $200,000 a year. Yeah. And, which,
Hooray.
yeah, it's important.
That's a big deal.
And the other proceeds from our endowment are used for financial aid, and they're used to match almost dollar for dollar the money we get from the US government to enable our research. So I think spreading that message is important. Now look, I wouldn't be able to be the president of an institute if I didn't also say, if something moves you to contribute, please do.
Indeed.
We've never needed it more.
Yes, well said. So, coming to the end of our talk today, it is easy to get distracted or disheartened at times by what's going on right now, but I love that MIT is always looking ahead. What can we do? How do we solve the important problems? And you really represent that for all of us. Can I ask you what you're looking forward to in the upcoming academic year besides frequent flyer miles?
Yeah. Well, look, these initiatives are really exciting. I'm looking to see the outcome. Also, every year when the new students come and I get to meet all these folks, they're just inspiring. And, you can be worried and, a little bit concerned about where we're going, but, MIT is going to be MIT. We will find a way. And the people, we still attract the very top talent in the world. And I just hope we can continue to do that because I'm really excited to see what they're going to do going forward.
Hear, hear. Great, thank you. So, before we officially wrap up and you all depart, there are 2 items to cover before we bring this day to a close. First, to thank President Kornbluth. Thank you for being here with us today and all weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thanks a lot. Thank you all.
All right. I think I'm moving to this mic, or not. There it is. So I also want to extend a final thank you to our moderators, our speakers, the entire Tech Reunions team. They put together an incredible program for you today, and of course all of you for taking the time, and a lot of you traveled from a long way. Thank you for being here and spending your time with us. There is something really special about being surrounded by people who are curious, collaborative, and driven to make a difference. It is the gift of being part of this MIT community that continues to move our country and our world forward as it has since 1861. The Institute has produced a new video that highlights these indelible innovations and societal game changers, all growing from that rare alchemy of daring minds, shared purpose, and hands-on ingenuity that can only have happened here. And so let's close Tech Day with a special look at the MAGIC, an acronym you should get to know soon, the magic of MIT. Enjoy.
Imagine a world without MIT. A world where our culture of innovation and capacity to solve real-world problems was never put into play. Imagine a world where radar didn't help the Allied forces find victory in World War II. A world without Ethernet, or email, or maybe even the internet itself. A world without CT scans, time-release drugs, artificial skin, and optogenetics. A world with no photolithography, a technique that enabled the fabrication of every chip in every laptop, smartphone, military system, and data center for the past 20 years. Forget about 3D printing, where we continue to set the standard in innovation with multi-material techniques and personalized manufacturing. Imagine a world where our smartphones are a lot less smart, where there is no GPS, or world standard methods for air traffic control. A world where cybersecurity is a lot less secure, AI is less intelligent, and bomb-sniffing technology doesn't exist. where space feels much farther away, and there is no Mars rover roving on the red planet. A world without an institute that fostered 105 Nobel laureates, 26 Turing Award winners, and 8 Fields medalists. We'd have more than 30,000 fewer companies that are responsible for millions of jobs and trillions of dollars pumped into the economy. Imagine that. Now think about the potential of what we are working on today. Quantum computing and artificial intelligence advances poised to revolutionize cybersecurity, drug discovery, and medical diagnostics. Engineering and computer science innovations to protect private data, defend the grid, and power America's energy independence. Targeted, groundbreaking therapies for Alzheimer's and individualized treatments for cancer, Parkinson's, and new remedies for malaria. Innovations in drug delivery that simplify the treatment of chronic diseases that have the potential to save millions of lives. Adaptive technologies for easier aging and prolonged independence. Robots, from personal assistants to disaster response, to ingestible microbots for medical applications. And fusion, an endless source of clean energy for everyone, forever. Can you imagine? We can.